Today on the Three Gorillas podcast, Mark and Greg discuss how violent protests help no one. We're talking ICE riots. You have found the Three Gorillas podcast. Listener discretion is advised.
And welcome back to the Three Gorillas podcast. My name is Greg Lawson, and as always, I am here with retired Major Mark Sawa.
Captain Good
afternoon. Joe Escorbano is on assignment. How's that? Was that good?
That's great. Yeah. Oh man, that hit it out the park.
Yeah. So this is a special report that we're doing here. This is out of sequence of our normal podcast episodes, but since LA is burning to the ground here, we thought we would step in and talk a little contemporary wisdom on dealing with highly emotional situations and you know who's right, who's wrong, and make some calls on this. What do you think, Mark?
Sounds great.
All right. Well, you know, I've been watching a little bit on the news. Years ago, when I was involved, I think in my first critical incident, I had some really good deputies that I worked with, and they were like, "Hey, worst thing you could do is listen to the radio. Don't watch TV. Don't listen to the radio, because most likely the reporters that are going to be reporting on your critical incident are going to have a bunch of stuff wrong. They could potentially make you look like you don't know what you're doing or silly or whatever. And it just adds to that stress, right?
Sure does.
Thinking back to the most recent big stuff as far as like George Floyd and some of the others, and watching the response of people. And Mark, this is a thing that, dude, I don't get. Now, I know that people complained about my generation and you, we're in the same, close to the same generation. And the older people were like, oh, you know, you're not being taught the way you should be taught nowadays in the 70s and in early 80s. You know, we used to have to do this. We used to have to do that. And I remember a lot of the tests that I had when I was in school, they were fill in the blank. They weren't multiple choice. And they slowly kind of transition to multiple choice. And now that's pretty much all you get in so much of the, actually, that's all you get with the United States standardized testing, which is horrible way of evaluating people and making them do a particular thing. But the thing that I'm getting at is something that is not taught is civics. Something that is not taught is citizenship. Something that is not taught is how our government works and what you as a citizen can do for civil remedies to solve problems. Like if you don't like what somebody's doing, you vote them out of office. If you feel that a new law should be enacted, you create some sort of mobility, talking to senators, talking to congressmen, talking to your local politicians, whatever, about getting something that's important, on the ballot and getting that done. And the thing that I think a lot of the people, as you can see the photograph behind me and the, hundreds of people that involved in that, don't know about civics. They don't know necessarily about government, and they don't understand the civil remedies that they have to solve a lot of these issues. From the last election 4.5 years ago, it was, the police are bad. Everybody's bad. We got to do, we got to fix all this. Well, snap of the finger, they didn't do much of anything. I know at the agency that we worked with, very little is done other than there's some DEI hiring going on. There's some new ideas of stuff. The last thing that came across my desk, one of the last things that came across my desk as a curriculum that I, as a director of training, had to review and approve and move forward was the part of the trauma informed care. And one of the things was no longer calling people that are incarcerated in jail an inmate. They were justice involved individuals.
You have got to be kidding me.
No, sir. And that's coming straight from some of the feds out there that are doing DEI work. Justice involved individuals. Now that includes everybody. That includes cops. That includes, but inmates. It makes them feel bad. Mark, I don't know if you know this or not, but if you call inmate Smith, come here. Yeah, it makes them feel bad about being in jail. You know, and you don't want them to feel bad. You want them to have a good environment and a good experience while they're in jail, right?
Yeah, but because
that's
you definitely don't want to send a message. Don't come back to jail again.
No, you wouldn't
Absolutely
want that.
Not.
And so I look at this and I just took this thing and I just closed it up and I was like, the next month that I'm here, I'm not approving anything. I'm not signing anything. I need to do a transition. Of course, that didn't happen, but I ended up leaving. And I'm just like, I'm not going to be a part of this madness anymore. This is just utter ludicrous. And so the reason I bring this up is I want to touch on something. Constantly on the news, and also senators and Congress people say, being an undocumented person isn't a criminal offense. Well, you had to get here somehow. And let me read real quick, Title 8 of the United States Code. Improper entry is crossing the border at unauthorized locations, entering without proper inspection, avoiding examination or inspection, and making false statements to conceal material facts. The criminal penalty for this is a criminal offense. For those of you who care, it is criminal. First offense for an individual is imprisonment up to 6 months to include a fine. Second time is more. So entering the U.S. through marriage fraud and that sort of stuff can be up to a $250,000 fine. So if you're in the United States and you're undocumented, that is a civil offense, but you had to get here. So you did not come through a proper point of entry. That is the criminal violation. You snuck in. Criminal trespass, burglary, same theory behind it, right? You have penetrated into this space that you're not allowed to be.
So the overstayed visas, that's not included into that, right?
It is, but not as a criminal. To answer, no, it's not a criminal offense. That is a civil offense. And that's the crazy part is I'm sure you've dealt with this before where you've arrested a person from south of the Texas border, wherever that be, Mexico, Guatemala, El Salvador, San Salvador, wherever. And you arrest them and you put them in jail. And depending on which sheriff you worked for, on whether they would notify ICE, which they're supposed to notify ICE. And so they notify ICE, and ICE is like, yeah, we don't care about that guy. We're taking care of business. Well, I've arrested in my career 6 people from Europe. ICE, it wasn't ICE then, but INS was there within a couple of hours. And they deported these Europeans like that. And I always thought that was really weird. It's like, oh, wait a second. What is that all about? They'll jump on the Europeans to deport them, but folks coming in illegally from south of the border, they don't. And now, of course, there's that cooperation is gone from Travis County and from Austin. notifying them of any of this stuff. So I just kind of wanted to lay that out. And as you know, district attorneys have the right to decline prosecution. That's what a lot of them do, especially ours here in Travis County. And law enforcement also has, what would you call it? We have
discretion,
freedom to decide whether we're going to make an arrest right there at the scene or not.
Sure. The Code of Criminal Procedure affords us that opportunity.
Yeah.
And in some ways not. In certain cases, we don't have that discretion.
Right. And so as law enforcement officers, here we are. Most of us are high school graduates. That's it. And we have gone through 700 hours of training, plus or minus 100 hours, whatever, and get a certification from the state that gives you the authority to take away the rights of American citizens. That's huge, right?
Tremendous.
And so the thing that we don't have is the ability to just say, we're not going to do our job. And so I find it incredibly interesting on how the rioters and such look at it as a law enforcement problem. It's an ICE problem. It's an LAPD problem. It's an Austin Police Department problem. It's a TCSO, Travis County Sheriff's Office problem, as opposed to as a legislative problem. If you have a problem with anybody, talk to the guys that wrote the law and told the cops to go out and enforce it.
Simple as that.
And that is where the Department of Education and anybody involved in teaching government and civics in junior high and high school has utterly failed us.
Oh, without a doubt. That's the last thing on the agenda.
And their kids don't understand what's going on, how to do whatever. And of course, a lot of these folks that are burning the house down out there have come in, have fled their country into the United States to have another life, have a better life, and then catch the flag on fire, spit on it, say these horrible things to everybody. And it's very confusing to me on how this whole response is, but I think I don't think it's going to turn out well for these individuals.
Well, they're certainly trying to, it appears that they're certainly doing more than anybody's ever done in the past about laying out the repercussions of their actions. Unfortunately, it's not in that kind of command post setting to where here's the LAPD chief, here's the LA sheriff, here's the director of the CHP, here's the mayor of LA, here's the mayor of all the satellite communities around LA that can be there. And then here's the representative from the federal government standing shoulder to shoulder with them. Unfortunately, that's not the case. What is the case is they have their little workup and there's all of the political undertones there in the county of Los Angeles, in the state of California. And then the separate press briefing is the federal briefing, wherever that's occurring, in Washington, be it in California, wherever it's occurring. And it's the separate briefing. It's the significantly more hard-nosed briefing. It's where they're telling people, hey, understand this. You're not going to get, this isn't going to be the revolving door of the state court. We are going to charge you federally, and you are going to prison if you're convicted of this crime, and you may go to prison for a long time, and we will stack those offenses against you. We will charge you what you committed, and it's, you roll the dice through that process. So I've never seen that before. I've only seen it when their backs are to the wall. Like Minneapolis in the George Floyd deal. And even then, Minneapolis didn't do that. But I've never seen that type of hard-nosed stance at this early in the process. And it's only from the federal government. And that's unfortunate because, as I said earlier, as me and you were talking before we started, there was, from my standpoint, which is a very remote standpoint, there seemed to be a lot of discombobulation and disorganization on Sunday, but there certainly wasn't on Monday. And they were like a fine-tuned machine on Monday. And I mean, so much so that they were impressive. And I don't hand out those accolades easily. And they were impressive the way their organization and their command structure was, and the operation of those separate elements, those so-called mobile field forces that were in play. And there looked like there was a significant amount of oversight and coordination regarding them. And then to hear the federal government do that, the only thing that was missing from my standpoint, again, the remote standpoint, was there just didn't seem to be the message from the state to lay the law down and say that this is what you can expect. So they were still, that creates a lot of ambiguity to people. They just think that this is going to be like George Floyd, which was like Ferguson, Missouri, which was like every other situation in the past where the overwhelming abundance of charges are dropped. And there is no repercussions to the action. So the federal government's doing what they can to show that there is, and it really, to me, again, from my standpoint, it really shows.
Well, and I think that it's something very important for people to talk about, and also for people to understand, is the Joe Biden administration was the first to not enforce these immigration laws. He was the first. Everybody else, Barack Obama, they called him the deporter in chief. George Bush, Bill Clinton. I read that Bill Clinton during his 8 years deported over 12 million people. I think Barack Obama did around 5 million. George Bush obviously did, I think, around 10 million. This is just this weird, crazy, lunatic shift that is happening. It's like all of a sudden, the only thing that defines a country, which would be borders, we're just not going to pay any attention to that. Just anybody can come in here and do whatever. Something that really bothered me personally was when my mom got really sick. We did not have the means in order to hospitalize her properly. And so I had to bankrupt her to get her into the Medicaid situation, right? So here's my mom, a great citizen, a teenager and young adult of World War II, very patriotic, a real patriot. And worked 42 years of her life, and put into Social Security. Well, by the end, her Social Security was about $1,300 a month is what she was drawing on. And then when she had to go into a nursing home, I had to bankrupt her. They took all her money and they put her in the nursing home, and that was great. It was a horrible nursing home. The staff was marginal. The place wasn't nice. But she was safe, and if I was there every day, her meds were correct and everything was taken care of. Right, so I was checking by every day. This nursing home is like right down the street from the house. So they took care of that and gave her $60 a month.
Jesus Christ! It's unbelievable.
Yeah, if anybody's listening and cares, go online and see what an illegal alien, because it's the Illegal Aliens Act. That's what they're called in the law. See how much money they can get through assistance through all these different government assistance and NGOs and private organizations, and what the federal government has given to them. If I wasn't as reasonable as I think I would be incredibly angry about the way that they treated my mom, and then the way that I see a person coming in that's completely illegally here in the United States. The other funny thing is now you have personal experience with this, right? You've been in a riot.
Well, I was in a Sears while a city burned around me. In 1968, when several days after Martin Luther King was assassinated, and I believe that date was April 4th, 1968. It was, the unrest slowly but very surely was escalated during the course of that week. And me and my father, I was 8 years old. Me and my father went to the Sears in Trenton, New Jersey. That was one of his favorite places to shop. If in 1968, Sears was the place to shop. That was that's where you got everything.
Yeah.
And that particular Sears was probably among the most premier Sears in all the what we call the tri-state area, Pennsylvania, New Jersey, and Delaware. And at the time, Trenton was the premier shopping restaurant city in the tri-state area as well. It has Trenton's right on the river, on the Delaware River, between Pennsylvania and New Jersey, and of course Trenton is the capital of New Jersey, and so there it's easy access from Philadelphia. And of course, all through the state of New Jersey, and that portion of Pennsylvania that borders New Jersey, at the time, it's a town called Levittown, and it was fashioned or modeled after the Levittown in New York. So it's this giant mega suburbia. So that area was very, very populated. And at the time, Philadelphia was America's fourth largest city. So that the suburbs, not included in that population, in that reported population, the suburbs were immense. So Trenton was a big draw because places like Levittown and Fairless Hills and Bensalem, all those surrounding suburbia, didn't have I'll use my air quotes, a downtown. Trenton sure did, and Trenton had a very proud downtown portion. So it was the place to go. And as that riot escalated over those days, it hit a crescendo on that particular day. We were at the Sears, and the Trenton police, I believe it was the Trenton police. It was police. Of course, I was 8 years old. There was minimal interest in the lines of authority as far as the police were concerned. But there was police officers that come into that Sears and said in no uncertain terms, no one's leaving the Sears in the dark. So we were there, and it hadn't turned, if my memory serves me correctly, daylight savings times hadn't kicked in, so it was dark early that evening, and Trenton was burning bright, and we had to remain in the Sears. I mean, I thought it was the greatest night of my life because I'm playing basketball and lifting weights all night long, sleeping in the Sears model beds, going from bed to bed. I thought it was the greatest night ever. And there's probably maybe a dozen or so of us shoppers in there at the time. And I guess my dad just lost track of what was going on outside, and a lot of other folks didn't. So we were, like I said, we were among maybe a dozen folks that spent the night in Sears. And at first light, with all the emergency equipment moving through Trenton, it was like looking at Berlin after the war. I mean, that entire city was smoking. And we headed on back to Philadelphia. And what was funny, what was ironic about that, certainly not funny, but Trenton, being the premier city that it was at the time, has never recovered from that. It still was a city that we held close in my family. And then I subsequently, as a teenager, spent a lot of time over there. But the downtown shopping district never recovered. I mean, and when I say never recovered, I'm not talking about never fully recovered. I'm talking about never with any level of its former self recovered. So and Trenton to this day is still in that position. So it when these cities worry about these looters and how that escalation creates kind of it's like a inferno. It feeds itself. It was really a great example. And then for years, I kind of kept my finger on the pulse of the special news broadcasts that occurred, and they still occur. In the Philadelphia and New Jersey area about the 50-year anniversary and such about the riots in Trenton. So it is really something that cities certainly have to keep have to do is everything they can to stay on top of it. I don't know if the officials in Trenton, because of mismanagement or ineptitude, I don't know if that was the causative factor that allowed that riot to go to the degree that it did, because it ranked right among all of the worst riots in the United States at the time in Newark and Detroit, if not the worst. But it certainly is motivation and food for thought that those are in positions of leadership to stay on top of these scenes and get on top of them as quick as possible.
Yeah, and you can say whatever you want to say about the mayor in LA. She's always on the back end of the curve of whatever's going on. She is very reactive. She's not a leader. It doesn't appear to be a leader in getting things done. Of course, that's just my observation from here in Austin, Texas. But it is being put across that way by the major news outlets that support her candidacy. You look at that sort of thing, and that's what really kind of is troublesome is she would probably have never gotten hired had the mayor's job be a position of a CEO of the city, and you're actually going to have applicants and you go through people's, credentials. She would not have been the person that they chose to run the city, but
no, hence the word politician,
right? She's a politician. You look back at Rita and Katrina hurricanes on the Texas and Louisiana Gulf Coast. And of course, when that happened, everybody just lost their mind to blame the feds that they didn't respond quick enough. And you and I both know that through the instant command system and FEMA and all that stuff, the local politicians, the local people running, their incident commands and stuff like that are to file certain paperwork and make certain requests before the feds can come in. And I find it very interesting because you're going to get critiqued. You're going to get criticized if you don't do it quick enough. You're sitting there going, well, maybe everything's going to be okay. Maybe everything's going to be okay. And then all of a sudden, everything's on fire. Everything's falling apart. And now you didn't take action. It's your fault. You should have taken action. And then the feds, if they overstep their bounds, then they're criticized. Look, you're coming in here and trying to take over. They didn't ask for your help. So it's a kind of a conundrum on both sides. But I know this. I would rather deploy a whole bunch of people before it gets bad and then suffer the ramifications of, oh, well, you were provocative. The reason we destroyed our own city is because you brought troops in.
Yeah, which ultimately makes no sense whatsoever.
It makes absolutely no sense. That would never fly in a family violence situation, right?
No, of course not.
I come home and the wife knows I'm supposed to be here, or I'm coming home at 5:00. She should have dinner ready at 5:30, and she didn't. Well, that's provocative, so that's why I beat her around. You could look at all of these microcosms of this victimization and this excuse-driven society of, I'm not going to hold myself accountable. I'm going to hold everybody else accountable, and I'm going to be a distractor and a blamer. I'm not going to concentrate on why are we really here? Because, really, why are we here having you and I and everybody else in the world having this conversation? We wouldn't be had the previous administration taking care of the border, and they did not. Supposedly the numbers are up to 20 million illegal people have come across, snuck into the United States. 20 million.
So many different numbers. I never know what to believe.
Yeah, I don't either. That sounds like a lot to me. I know that's enough that it doesn't matter whether you are a voting citizen or not. When they do, count the citizens, and you have X amount of citizens in your area, well, you get an extra congressman. So that's the only motivation that I can think of why politicians would just allow anybody to come in the United States undocumented, willy-nilly, other than to just gain more seats in the House. That's the only thing I can figure out.
And it all boils down to always giving people in positions of leadership the benefit of the doubt that they are there on one side or another, but their ultimate goal is to make the best of this country, is to do the best job they can for this country. We give them the benefit of the doubt, but that may not be the case.
Not right now. It's not. One person can't make every one of their decisions can't be wrong. Yet our current sitting president, no matter what he does, it's going to be wrong, no matter what, for a certain population of the electorate. And also for Congress and the Senate. They're not going to do anything that would help out the American people if it's Trump's idea. And for what it's worth, real quick, I voted for Bill Clinton the first time. I voted for Barack Obama the first time.
I can't imagine anybody not voting for Barack Obama the first time.
Yeah, and I'm sitting there going, what? Let's run the gamut on this and let's see how this goes. And I want to have the right guy for the right job, but when it just gets down to just, we're going to burn the house down, I'm not on board with that at all.
Yeah. So I mean, when you have the potential of having people in leadership positions in the government who are actively and whose sole intention is to put forth throw as many wrenches into the works and to actively put countermeasures in place to destroy the government. Yeah. I mean, if that is the case, then you've got a very, very, very big problem, and it's going to take a hell of a leader in order to address that and to turn that around.
It was really funny. I was watching a little bit of the news. I didn't watch much. It was probably 5 minutes or something. I had to shut it off. I'm like, I'm in Georgetown. I'm not going to worry about this right now. But they were talking about, they were yelling at the soldiers, remember your oath, and all this stuff. It's like, defend my country against all terrorists and all enemies, foreign and domestic, and obey the orders of the president. It doesn't say anything about a governor, a mayor, or circumventing the law.
Yeah.
These people are, you were talking about Trenton. So 1967, the year before, Lyndon B. Johnson sent out federal troops. He sent the 82nd Airborne Division to the Detroit riots. The 82nd Airborne Division. That's what you roll, the 82nd Airborne Division, when you want to level someplace.
And they did, and they said it in the MLK riots and the 6th Cavalry as well. And the thing about the 82nd Airborne is that when they were called in to quell the MLK riots, again, to remind you, that was in April of 1968. The Tet Offensive occurred in January of 1968. So from January, February, and March, our soldiers in Vietnam were fighting every day to quell that Tet offensive. So when that 82nd Airborne and that 6th Cavalry came back to the States, they came back a very, very battle fatigued group.
Sure.
And when they were sent in there was absolutely no nonsense from that standpoint. And even their leadership was given to a very large degree, a level of carte blanche to quell those riots. And those riots were quelled. They were quelled. They were quelled post haste. Because they didn't fool around. I mean, there was a sniper in a building in Detroit that's using a rifle was met with literally a bazooka by a member of the 82nd Airborne. So that was a very, very strong response, and those riots were quelled almost immediately.
And you and I will both agree we don't want that, but it's better. So this is something I used to do. Actually, you used to teach this. I think I took one of your classes. You taught side handle baton, right?
Sure did.
Okay. You might have said this, but it always kind of rang in the back of my head. Let's go back to Rodney King. Rodney King was beaten pretty badly. And once again, the cops didn't violate policy, because their policy was if somebody gives you active aggression, you can hit them with a stick and give them commands, and they have to follow your commands. If they don't follow your commands, hit them with a stick again. So you end up hitting somebody 32 times with very ineffective hits, right? I think it was you said, does it look better to hit somebody 32 times, just kind of lightly hit them 32 times, or hit them one time with 100% of what you got? And I'll take that video, that one hit looks a lot better than sitting there beating somebody 32 times.
Which was one of the reasons behind the development of the side handle baton, was to create the ability to not just use one hand, but use two hands, and to initiate as much power as you could possibly initiate. The 100%. You were never taught. I was never taught a defensive technique other than a distraction strike that was not to be delivered with 100% effectiveness, because that was the mindset behind it. The other reason for the side handle baton was to stop people from hitting people in the head with it. So if you could generate enough power to strike them in the common perineal or the radial artery, the radial motor nerve center, you were able to provide a significantly greater impetus to prevent their subsequent resistance, as opposed to striking them in the head with a straight baton.
And that's what I'm saying is you go in and you take care of business right now. No nonsense. I don't care what your motivation is. I don't care what you're trying to get done. If you're burning citizens' cars, you're hurting people, you're tearing up government property, I don't care. I'm going to roll in. I'm going to use the force that I need to stop you from doing that, put you in jail, and I will let the DA or the federal prosecutors on this side, which that's why Trump rolled that in. I'm quite sure, is he figured that, the DA in LA is not going to do anything with any of the rioters like they did before. So he's going to deal that on the Fed side. But sitting there listening to the news, it's like some of these reporters are the most uninformed people. I remember reporters used to know what they were talking about, and they would ask questions and let people respond. And that's the way it was at, the riots in Detroit, but not now. It's all commentating, and it's a lot of it is just misinformation. I saw one, it's like, this is unprecedented. Okay. So rolling troops in isn't unprecedented, folks. The Whiskey Rebellion, George Washington started with that in 1794. We got the Detroit race riots in 1943. We got the Little Rock integration crisis, 1957. We got Ole Miss integration, 1962. Federal troops, U.S. Marshals, and a bunch of people rolled in on the Mississippi thing. Birmingham campaign, 1963. John F. Kennedy, the prince of the Democratic Party, rolled in federal troops on that situation. The Detroit riots we talked about, up in New Jersey, we talked about Washington, D.C. and other cities after the assassination of Martin Luther King, LBJ, deployed military to go in and suppress those riots. Kent State, Richard Nixon rolled military in to suppress the students at Ohio, was it Ohio State University? Kent State. And the Ohio National Guard, and that did not turn out well. I've been there before, and they have little plaque memorials where all of the students that got shot, where they actually died. It's pretty moving. We can go back to George Bush deployed folks into LA back in 1992 after the Rodney King issue. There's been several others since then. We could argue a little bit as far as troops going into Waco. They were federal law enforcement going into Waco, and the federal troops, military troops there, were just advisors, and they were providing equipment, not necessarily troops actually running stuff. But George Floyd protests in 2020. National Guard was activated there. I can go on and on and on. People think, oh, well, there were 6 times. There are 6 times that this happened. No, sir. The standing presidents have done this multiple times. I was going to roll in 2 more here. The Whiskey Rebellion. Okay. The Great Railroad Strike. That's 1877. They did it there. Pullman Strike, 1894. Federal troops rolled in there. 1919. The race riots. Woodrow Wilson rolled troops and Marines into there to quell those riots in Chicago and Washington, D.C. We talked about Little Rock, Ole Miss, Detroit. You could, if you want to go U.S. Virgin Islands, George Bush sent military down there. That was the aftermath of Hurricane Hugo, which that's not just like race riots, but there were obviously riots after that because of food and that sort of thing. So when we look at this is not. It is something unusual, right? It's unusual, but it's not illegal, and it's not something that presidents haven't done before. And I have to say, man, I am the guy that will roll people in an hour before just in case something's going to happen. And then if nothing happens, everybody rolls out. If something does happen, okay, we have people to handle it. The problem is when you have politicians and media saying the reason our people got violent is because you were provocative and you prepared. You brought people in that could handle this situation. You set it up to where people would be safe. And because you did that, then we burnt the building.
Greg, your mic kind of faded there.
I did?
Yeah, it's back.
Okay. I don't get it when you prepare to make sure that violence isn't going to happen. Then you have politicians and the media and people saying the reason the violence did happen is because you did prepare.
It's just what you said earlier. It's just from Trump's standpoint, Trump can do no good. So, I mean, anything he does is going to be criticized, and they're going to try to find a reason to justify that criticism. But like I said, to bring those people on board, get them in a staging location, get them completely briefed up, there's absolutely nothing wrong with that. There is no formula, there is no strategy that is anywhere in the military or in law enforcement that says that you should not have the amount of resources readily available to you. You know, even the incident, you mentioned the incident command system. One of the keys to the incident command system is the utilization of a staging area. And I will tell you, if you go to any of the debriefs of any of the major law enforcement situations that's ever occurred, critical incidences that have ever occurred, you will see time and time and time again that the lack of using a staging location where there was a delay in leadership taking control, and then as a result of that, the implementation of the incident command system, and then as a result of that, not utilizing a staging resource and a staging manager, are always right at the top of the things that agencies didn't do well during the course of those critical incidences. There's no theory and strategy in place that says, what you don't want to do is you don't want to escalate a situation because you have resources in a staging area. That just absolutely ridiculous. Absolutely ridiculous.
When you watch the news, it makes it look like these ICE agents, the National Guard, the Marines, and all the federal troops are like marching around downtown LA, just harassing the peaceful protesters. When that's pretty far from the truth. I have two people that I train with that are there now, and they're isolated very much down at the ICE detention facility. They're set up there. They're responding to different groups because these different groups decide to do protests. Well, this isn't going to work here, so we're going to do a protest here. Well, obviously, they're going to need to move those troops over to those locations. Another thing that I find really hilarious, this happens a lot, and it happens from one side of the house always. And it's like, you deployed these people here, and these soldiers had to sleep in the stairwells. They didn't have any food. They didn't have any water. They didn't have blah, 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 blah. It's like, look in their backpack. They have 3 days of rations. Look in their canteens. They have water. Yeah, they're sleeping in the freaking stairwells. You want to put them up at the Motel 6?
Yeah.
No, they're going to sleep on site, you idiots.
Yeah, and they're not high school kids on a field trip. They're soldiers. And it's actually a welcome spot to sleep inside of a building on the floor rather than who knows where.
I have I would be so tired. I would just do a rucksack flop and pull my poncho liner over me and fall asleep in blinding snow. Anywhere. And I would wake up. I would wake up with a foot of snow on top of me, happy as a clam because I got my sleep.
Yeah, sleep in.
Could care less.
Exactly.
Like, do y'all want to put up the 10-man tent? I do not want to wait. I don't want to waste that hour of sleep I could get putting up the 10-man tent. I would rather get bed down right there and just go to sleep, man. And so, when I hear that, it's like, y'all are just petty, goofy idiots. Y'all have no idea what these troops are capable of. And if anybody is complaining about it, if any troops are complaining about it, then they don't understand what the mission is. And they also don't deserve the thing that people always say to them. Thank you for your service.
Yeah, exactly.
You don't say thank you for your service if you're, getting treated greatly. I got treated so well. It was wonderful. Well, why am I thanking you? I'm going to thank you for your service because you had to sleep in the stairwell. Thank you, man. But hey, so we were talking also. I was on the field force as a field force person and as a medic for I think like 2 years. This is a long time ago. Was that in the 80s or was that mid 90s?
That was actually, to be quite frank with you, to show your time discombobulation, that was like circa 2003, 2002, 2004.
Yeah, because that would have been after Y2K that they actually organized it, because prior to that, we just had the old shields, the old face mask, and the 42-inch hickory batons.
That's right. That's right.
Okay.
There was the SWAT team was used on that kind of ad hoc basis. So in 1991, when there was the protests for the Gulf War, I was a member of that first TCSO SWAT team, and we were put in place with DPS crowd control team there at the Capitol, and we did several other different augmented missions with both APD and DPS during that period of time. But it wasn't the formalized mobile field force team. So that really wasn't in place till like 2002, 2003.
So I remember Law was a sergeant. So I should have thought about that. Law was a sergeant at the time, so that makes more sense. But it was ran pretty tight there for a while, and then there was some sort of change. Who took over after you?
I have no idea.
There was some sort of change, and it got goofy. Nobody was doing the formalized formations and calling out, commands. They were just kind of, all right, y'all turn to the right now. All right, y'all turn back to the left now. It's like, you're not going to hear that when everybody's screaming. You need to practice your commands.
Right. And your movements. And it's funny because when you're practicing, they seem kind of, is this really applicable? Are the things really applicable in a real time event? And they are, they are. And when you have a plan in place, no matter how unapplicable it is to that particular event or to the particular environment and the situation and behaviors of the people, it is significantly easier to modify your plan rather than try to develop a plan in those chaotic moments to try to put together a plan. So, even those teammates or team members working together, doing movements and following commands by a person puts them in a far better position to deal with the dynamics and complexity and the ever-changing dynamics and complexity of a critical incident rather than try to hey, let's stabilize this thing and let me catch up. It just doesn't work that way.
Right. We were deployed during the G7. Remember when the G7 came to Austin and they had all the protests?
Yeah, that was after my time.
Yeah, we were downtown in that. We had some drama, some stuff thrown at us, people yelling at us, people trying to penetrate our lines and all that stuff. But for the most part, because of overwhelming force and overwhelming intimidation, having masks on, having helmets on, looking like robots out there, there's a level of intimidation.
And that's part of it.
It's really funny. I have a very good friend of mine that was criticizing. I can't believe these ICE guys with their masks on. Take your mask off. Let me see who you are. And it's like, that's not what that's all about. It's to scare you.
Right.
I can intimidate you to turn around and walk away. I don't have to use physical force.
Right. It's that faceless entity.
Yeah.
That unemotional, faceless entity.
Yep. The stormtroopers, right?
Yep.
You don't know who's under that helmet. But that's the way psychology in those big group think atmospheres work. I sit back and I think about a lot of the potentials violence that could have happened had we not used overwhelming intimidation to begin with. This in SWAT. When you roll with SWAT, that is the mission, is overwhelming intimidation. So nobody even thinks about firing off.
Right.
They look and they go, oh my God.
Right. You present that front that says you cannot prevail. Yeah. You absolutely cannot prevail. And then you use your strategies, those kind of tactical de-escalation strategies, which run the gambit. I don't want to use that in that post-Ferguson era of American policing buzzword fashion, but you use what methods and strategies, tactics and techniques and tools along with that show of force to show that you're organized, you're well led, you're well managed, and that there's nothing you can't do. So any resistance and any continued resistance is just simply futile.
I look back, and I have a good friend of mine that was over with APD, who's a sergeant over there, Joel Pridgeon. He was caught up in all of the riots that we had in 2020 and all of the drama, and the fact that everyone knows that the Austin Police Department will give up ground. They will just back up and back up and back up. And then they just back up into their headquarters, lock the doors, and let people throw rocks and bottles and everything. There's no, at that time that their particular administration, the way that the city was being run, the rioters learned that, well, APD is not going to do anything. And then the DA isn't going to file any charges on us. This is all serving their purpose. And like him, love him, hate him, whatever. I find it very interesting how Rick Perry realizes that Austin is not going to do much as far as any kind of violent protest, riots, looting, whatever. So he's rolled in, DPS, and he's got troopers coming in to handle the downtown areas that have, state buildings that and property owned by the state, and also kind of assisting APD because APD is not allowed to do certain things.
Are you talking about present day, Greg?
Present day, yeah.
And that would be Greg Abbott.
Yeah. What did I say?
Rick Perry.
Oh, sorry. No, I meant Greg Abbott. Yeah. Whether you like him, hate him, whatever, he has put that forward, which is a very smart idea, because if Austin Police Department is going to fall back on their old tactics of, we're going to stand here and look intimidating, but when you do anything, we're not going to do anything. We're just going to back up. The troopers aren't going to do that. The troopers are going to arrest you. You're going to go to jail, and you're going to have to deal with that, because that's the thing that I talked to Joel Pridgeon about, is, at what point are police officers allowed to defend themselves? But if you have civilians that are in charge of the police department that believe that by the police mere presence being there is going to invoke violence, you're just completely just whacked in the head.
Well, even on Sunday when the LAPD chief was given his briefing, and I like that guy. I mean, I don't know really anything about him, but everything I've seen so far, I like him. He seems to be somewhat of a straight shooter, and you probably couldn't be in a more politically surrounded job than that. But he was talking about the commercial grade fireworks, and he was saying, those things, and he said, and I quote, though they're shooting commercial grade fireworks at us, and those things can kill you.
Yes.
And I watched a barricade. I watched these rioters behind a makeshift barricade, but it looked pretty sturdy. And they were using like I don't know what the weapon is called. It's like a mobile cannon that they used in the Second World War. They hooked it up to a Jeep, has two wheels. It's a cannon. It's very mobile. They created the situation that was almost a duplicate of that cannon, to where they're firing commercial grade fireworks at police officers lined up, and they've created this, cover around their ability to, through a tube, fire with accuracy, fire these commercial grade fireworks. And they just fire one firework after another, after another, after another. And here's these police officers standing in formation, just simply trying to get out of the way of the fireworks. After the police chief says, those commercial grade fireworks can kill you. They're firing commercial grade fireworks and kill you. Those officers were standing there, and I'm assuming under some type of order, while they fire those commercial grade fireworks at them.
Yeah. And through my tactics, I'm going to have a react team, and I'm going to have a squad, and I'm going to have an overwatch, and I'm going to say, go take that position.
Yeah. How would you not?
I'm taking that position.
Yeah. They only have the ability to attack in one way. They don't even have at a 90-degree tack. They don't even have the ability to go 180 degrees, let alone 360 degrees to where you could flank them.
So all you have to do is just go on Google and just put in firework injuries, and
God.
look at the X-rays of these firework injuries, of broken arms, hands blown completely off, that sort of thing. That is an explosive to the degree or above of what a gun, pistol, rifle, shotgun, subgun, precision rifle will do to you.
Sure.
So I have no problem whatsoever of them returning lethal fire on somebody like that.
Well, again, when you know definitively that force, in the manner of its use or intended use, I don't know how the state of California defines deadly force, but I would wager that it's pretty similar to the state of Texas.
Yep.
And full force in the manner of its use or intended use is capable of causing serious bodily injury or death is deadly force.
You know, a properly equipped stack of 7 guys could go right up to that position and take that position. And that's without actually shooting anybody with real bullets.
Even flanking them. They only have the ability to attack in one direction.
But once again, they're just sitting there doing nothing and just, taking it as they go along.
Yeah.
And to me, that sends the wrong message, because everybody else sees, oh, look what they're doing. The cops aren't doing anything. Let's do some more.
Exactly right.
Well, man, I have a feeling we could talk a long time about this.
Guarantee you.
Hey, what the picture you got? Lean over to the side and tell us a little bit about that picture you got there.
That is a base jump off of a summit called Tombstone in Moab, Utah, at a time called the Turkey Boogie, and I believe it was in 2007. That slight little snowstorm. It doesn't snow very often in Moab on the regular, but that is a kind of a already established convoluted camera lens to give it that kind of fisheye appearance, and to kind of give it that effect.
Is that what kind of rig is that you're jumping? That's you, right?
Yeah, that's a base rig.
Okay. Right.
Yeah, that's a base rig. So that again, that's down into the bottom of that valley there at Tombstone. I think there's about 28 different summits there in Moab where base jumping does occur. There's probably significantly more where base jumping could occur. But anyway, that's a little memento from the Thanksgiving boogie.
Well, man, thank you for joining me on this. I just kind of wanted to get this thing and get it out there and get people talking. And hopefully those of you that watched actually got a little bit out of it as far as, covering Title 8, the fact that we would not be having this conversation if we did not have this huge influx of illegal persons and an administration that did nothing about it. We wouldn't be talking about it. It's the first one. It's not like all the Democrats, all the Democratic presidents, they never did anything. All the Republican presidents, they never did anything. Everybody did it up to the Joe Biden administration. And then all of a sudden, it was like something shifted in the party, and it's like, oh no, everything's fine. Come on over. So just think about what it is that makes a country and a reasonable response to enforcing the laws that we have. If you don't like the laws, then you talk to your legislators, you talk to people in the know, you talk to lobbyists, and you get the law changed. I would love to see a law where if you employ an undocumented worker, it's a Class A misdemeanor or a Class B misdemeanor for everyone that you do. Now, if they come up with fake, IDs and that sort of thing, that's not the person that's hiring them's responsibilities to validate that.
Yeah, it's just like somebody checking an ID for alcohol.
But
If that
they're
ID is valid,
hiring
or he's a good counterfeit,
Yeah, that they know is illegal because they're going to be able to pay them $10 an hour instead of $22. But they don't do that, and it makes you wonder why. Right? There's something also goofy going on with that. But any words of wisdom or end of show
Consider
comment?
your source, Greg. So you asking me for words of wisdom. Consider.
Hey man, I've gotten wisdom from you. I might not have acknowledged it at the time, but I put it there. Maybe he's right. I don't know. All right, so that's today's show. If you would like to see more, you can find us on Podbean, Apple Podcast, Spotify, Amazon, Player FM, YouTube, Pocket Cast, and a whole lot more. Check out our website or email us at the website, 3gorillaspodcast.com. And that is all spelled out with like letters, 3gorillaspodcast.com. We're going to be resuming our normal scheduled broadcast, hopefully next week. And we'll get out episode 8, which I think we skipped over. We did 9. And then we will do episode 10. So please send your emails our way, and we will follow up, and we will actually respond and act accordingly if there's some good stuff that we need to cover. So on behalf of myself, thank you for watching. Mark?
Gregory, always a pleasure.
It's my friend. Thanks, man. Thanks for taking the time. And hopefully we will see everybody maybe in the, I don't know, next week or 2. We are out of here. Have a good one.
Sounds great, Gregory. Take care.
All right, bro.
The Three Gorillas Podcast is a zombie advocacy production.